We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
Do you remember the Weekly World News? Did you ever read the Weekly World News?
I didn't read it, but I saw it at the checkout line.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, do I remember it? Absolutely. Did I read it? No. I mean, I read it while I was standing in line with my mom in the grocery store. So
Yeah. I definitely remember like begging my parents to buy me copies of it occasionally because it had like, I don't know, Loch Ness Monster captured. They did that a lot. There was a lot of like Loch Ness Monster dead or Bigfoot captured or stuff like that. And then of course Bat Boy, which really put them on the map. But yeah,
Weekly World News was your teen beat.
It kind of was, actually. Yeah, I loved it because I was so into all of the, cryptids and paranormal stuff. And so, yeah, when you had, like, aliens abducted my grandmother and she taught them how to make cookies or whatever, I was like, oh, my God, like, this is really cool. Not really... I thought it was real, and my parents actually had to sit me down and be like, this is not news.
I love that. An early know how to investigate your sources lesson from Matt's mom and dad.
Yeah, because I'm over here like, no, there's clearly a plesiosaur on the cover. Like, they found Nessie. It's right there. Look at the picture. It's so crystal clear.
I wonder if they hadn't sat you down, how long it would have taken you to realize that it wasn't real.
Maybe I never would have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, my dad told my sister that chocolate milk came from brown cows as a joke when she was like 3. Mm-hmm. And then when she was like 6, my dad realized that she still thought that because she believed him and did not realize that he was making a joke. And he had to be like, nope, that's not. Sorry, I said that. That's not a thing.
You don't know what kids are gonna like process and because they take everything as truth. Like, you don't know anything about the world when you're young, and so if somebody tells you this is the way it is and you trust that person, then you believe that person.
Yep.
And that's kind of why we need things like journalistic integrity, and we need sources that you can rely on and be like, okay, we trust this, but we don't trust the Weekly World News to tell us what's going on in the White House, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And to quote Zach Bagans, that is why we are here. We are slaying monsters.
I was going to say you shouldn't trust Ghost Adventures either.
Yeah, really.
but a broken clock is right twice a day, so
yes.
Sometimes. So we are slaying monsters. We got Maddie J.
Hey.
We got Katie.
Hi.
And I'm EJ. And we're going to talk about haunted paintings.
Yes. So we are specifically going to talk about what I think is the most haunted painting of them all, at least the most famous haunted painting of them all, because it's also the most, would you say, prolific? It's got the most copies of any haunted painting as far as I'm aware. So, yeah.
You mean like there's more than one of them?
Oh, yes. There are thousands of them, as we'll see as we move through this story. Yeah.
Thousands of the Crying Boy.
Yes. The Crying Boy specifically, there were thousands of copies of it. And not just that one painting, because it came from... basically, this artist painted a bunch of crying children, and all of the crying children were cursed.
Oh, boy. I'm excited.
Now, haunted objects have their own kind of particular set of lore. And I think it comes from this idea that somebody could unknowingly introduce something evil or possessed into their house that turns your existence into a living hell. So it's become like this very popular trope in horror fiction. The most common version of that's, of course, the haunted doll. We see that with Annabelle. It's possessed by allegedly a vengeful spirit instead. There's Robert the doll. These things that like you have this thing that should be cute and cuddly and something that you give to your kid, but it's actually inherently massively evil. We've also talked about Dybbuk boxes, which allegedly contain malevolent spirits that are trapped inside this box. But in England in the 1980s, a new haunted object exploded onto the occult scene. That was the painting of a crying boy, a painting haunted, allegedly, by such a dark and powerful energy that it was indestructible. Even after a housefire gutted their home, owners of the painting swore that that painting remained unharmed, as if it had been cursed, and maybe even that it was the cause of the fire. The most terrifying part is that that painting was one of thousands, and all of them were cursed. That series of paintings of crying children became synonymous with catastrophe, from death to destruction to illness. And some even claim that the child depicted in there, or the children depicted on these paintings, was the devil himself, or maybe painted by the devil himself.
There's something really interesting about in horror in general. I think in what appeals to the masses and makes a good ghost story in real life is something cute or pretty that is evil and causes destruction.
Totally. Yeah. Again, that's Annabelle the doll, right? Just like a very innocuous Raggedy Ann doll. And you're like, oh my God, no, this is fundamentally evil, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Child's play.
Yeah.
I hadn't looked at the painting before we started.
Oh.
Weirdly, I looked at other ones, but not at this one. And it's interesting that this is the painting, because there's a couple of them, because I'm seeing a bunch of the crying children one. There's a couple of them where I'm like, okay, that one's a little bit weird. But like the rest of them just look like cute little kids.
Yeah.
Like, why would you think this is haunted?
Because it survived a fire, and because the paintings were unharmed by fire. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm just saying, to EJ's point, like, they look otherwise innocuous.
Yeah.
But the innocuousness, I think, is the creep factor.
And then especially with this, I think there's something to this idea that you don't know that this thing is in your house is so dangerous. And then all of a sudden you find out, oh my God, there's something that I've had that I haven't even realized might be affecting me and my family. Like how we brought this into our house, or somebody gifted it to us, and now I've put my whole family in jeopardy by owning it, but I never knew. I think that is a very scary notion for people. Now, our sources here will be the book Stick It Up Your Punter, The Uncut Story of the Sun by Peter Chippendale and Chris Horry. And I'll also be using Tears for Fears, The Curse of the Crying Boy by David Clark, published by Revenant. Now, the notion of cursed paintings is probably as old as the medium of painting itself. There are several stories of allegedly haunted paintings that brought misfortune to their owners. One of the most famous of these is Minovia, or Portrait of a Lady, painted by Juan Luna. This undated painting is allegedly a depiction of the artist's wife, Paz Pardo de la Tavera, reclining in bed holding a rosary. And the claim here is that the curse of Minovia comes from the tragic death of Luna's wife. Believing that she was unfaithful, he murdered his wife in 1892. And he was acquitted a year later because it was legal to murder your wife as a crime of passion in Spain in the 1890s.
What the fuck?
I'm pretty sure it was legal to like murder your wife if you thought she had cheated on you until like, I'm totally pulling this out of my butt, but I think until like the 1950s, like even in the US, like I just feel like, yeah. Anyway, that's wild though. But I was reading that he actually also injured other people, like his son, his brother-in-law, his Like when he killed his wife, he hurt other people too. It was like a mass shooting, basically, of his family.
Yeah, I mean, he was not in his right mind when he committed that crime. No, absolutely not. And there's debate as to whether his wife was being unfaithful anyway. But so the story goes that because he was never punished for that murder, her spirit couldn't find peace. And so she chose to haunt the painting and bring misfortune to anybody who owns it. And so one owner of that painting went bankrupt, another suffered from hypertension, and apparently when the painting was unveiled at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Manila, a light bulb above it burst.
So I thought it was interesting too, because when I was reading quickly about this painting, apparently art folks believe that the painting is not even of his wife. It's of a woman that he painted a lot, another person who was like one of his muses. So right. I thought that was interesting too, in terms of the formation of haunted legends. Like,
yeah, it's her name was Angela Duche, and she was apparently just like a frequent muse and collaborator with him. So I don't know why his wife would choose to haunt the painting of his muse, unless maybe he was being unfaithful too. I've kind of heard that as a theory that was floated. She haunted the painting of this woman that he was being unfaithful with. But
that's so convoluted and
I know.
Tangled up. Oh my God. These things are such urban myths.
And I don't want to be assumptive, but an artist in 1800s in Spain is probably cheating on his wife.
Yeah. Now, another creepy painting, allegedly cursed, comes from the University of London, where I believe still hangs to this day. Titled Man Proposes, God Disposes, it depicts a gory end to one of the most famous lost nautical expeditions. You have two snarling polar bears that are tearing at the wreckage of a ship with scattered bones revealing the gruesome fate of the sailors. That painting is a representation of the fate of the HMS Erebus, one of John Franklin's ships lost during his expedition to the Arctic. Franklin was trying to find the Northwest Passage, a shipping lane that would hopefully bridge the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The Erebus, accompanied by the aptly named HMS Terror, found themselves stuck in the Arctic ice there. And after going through a hard winter with their supplies running low, they had no choice but to abandon their ships and continue on foot across the ice. They all ultimately perished, and the Erebus and Terror were lost for decades. Actually, over a century. The fate of the crews and ships for decades and decades was a constant nautical mystery. Although the Erebus was abandoned in 1845, we finally found it in 2014.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And we still don't really know what happened and what the fate of the men aboard that ship was. I would think polar bears are not entirely out of the question.
I watch a YouTube channel of these people that boat around sometimes, and they sailed through the Northwest Passage, which you can do now, but it's still quite dangerous, even in the springtime. And they talk a lot about what can happen. And to me, I'm just making an assumption, but to me, I'm like, how is it that hard to figure out what happened? What happened is they got stuck in the ice and then they couldn't move, so they got off the boat and tried to hike somewhere, and then they died because they were on ice in the Arctic with no supplies, and there was wildlife. There were polar bears. like I don't know. Why are we confused? That's probably what happened.
Yeah, I think you're right, Katie. I think that's exactly what happened. I think people want to know exactly the timeline. I think that's what they're trying to figure out, is what led to the deaths and how did they die. And I think they can definitely surmise that it was those factors that you said, but I think they want more of a timeline probably. But anyway, there's this book called The Terror by Dan Simmons. You should never read it, Katie, because it's very, very scary.
It's a great book. It's really great.
It is one of those books. It actually takes a lot to get me scared reading a book. And I read that years ago, late at night in my old creaky farmhouse. And I started it, and even the beginning is terrifying. And I was like, whoa. I was like, this is like life-changing. This book is it was good, and it was so good. Like, it was so scary.
It's about the HMS Terror.
Yeah, it's a fictionalized version. So,
but very, very historical and well-researched. Like, it's a very well-researched, fictionalized account that eventually devolves into a horror book.
Yeah. There's some
really
elements that are not real in it. Obviously not real in it.
No. I'm a little bit nervous even hearing you talk about how scary it was, because my imagination is immediately like, oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What could have happened to these people?
So, well, this painting is one version of this story. Man proposes, God disposes. It was painted by Sir Edwin Landseer in 1864. So that's just about 20 years after the ships were lost. Landseer was an accomplished painter himself. He was well known for his detailed animal depictions. Particularly, he was really good at capturing animals' emotions, or at least showing very emotive animals. If you look at Man Proposes, God Disposes, you can feel like the hunger and the aggression that comes from these polar bears. There's one that's snarling, almost like it's smiling, almost like it's like relishing in tearing these sailors apart.
Yeah, there's ecstasy in the polar bear, and that's a really hard thing to capture. He did such a good job.
Yeah.
It's
so
a really cool painting.
Yeah. It was unveiled at the British Royal Academy of Arts. Lady Jane Franklin, the widow of the doomed captain, John Franklin, she attended that exhibition, but she refused to look at the painting. I think that that's a very understandable choice, but I also think that that was the first little droplet, the first kernel of curse around it. Because if you think about that, this painting that's so horrific that the widow can't even look at it feels like the backbone of that story, right? And then soon other rumors started to develop too. It was hanging at the University of London, where the polar bears would look down ominously on the students as they took their exams. And the desk nearest to the painting was considered to be the cursed location when you were in proximity to the painting. Anyone who sat there, they said, was doomed to fail their exams. I think that's probably less from supernatural curse and more from the students being very distracted by the gruesome polar bears than anything. But either way, the proctors at the University of London started covering the painting during their exams. Allegedly, this all started because a student was too terrified to even participate in class, and so the instructor found the largest thing he could, which was the Union Jack, and covered the painting with it. And that quickly became a tradition, and allegedly that continues to this day, where for exams, they cover the painting with a Union Jack.
So cool.
I know. I kind of love it. I mean, it's silly, but I'm also like, good. Do it.
Yeah. I know, Katie, you're very much in favor of that, right? It's like, this scary ass painting. Why do you want to look at that?
Well, scary, but I don't know. Something, as I've gotten older, I've just become a fan of like little rituals, in little superstitions. Like, even if they're silly and like, if they're not harming anything, and if it's going to make these students feel better to cover this ugly painting, it's not ugly, to cover this scary painting. It's a beautiful painting, actually.
Yeah, it is.
But like, to cover this scary painting, then they absolutely should. And I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it,
and now
too.
it's like and now it's like part of the exam ritual, and like, just do it.
There also, according to the rumors, according to the myths, one time they did not cover the painting. and an unnamed student was actually driven to self-harm from it. That student allegedly stabbed themselves in the eye with their pencil before collapsing on the desk. And when the instructor inspected their exam paper, they found a message written on it.
The polar bears made me do it.
Creepy, right?
That's so fucking cool. Hell yeah.
So I would say that this story is apocryphal, or at least wildly inaccurate. You would think that death by pencil, or at least injury by pencil in the eye during an exam, would be very well documented at the University of London. But there's no evidence that this ever happened. The college's curator, Dr. Laura McCulloch, said,
I've heard it was a girl. I've heard it was a boy. I've heard about 3 different ways they killed themselves. Students are quite superstitious. If you speak to anyone at the uni, there is a consensus that it's true.
However, she couldn't find any evidence of a student suicide in that room or near that painting.
I mean, listen, you got to have a little oomph to your rumors.
Especially, like, I feel like Britain is very full of crazy stories, crazy little secret, like, lots of quirky little legends. It's such a, I mean, they've had centuries to build these amazing legends. And
well, and I do think that's part of the university thing, is that when you've had that many people come through that university, that classroom, sit in that desk, it almost begs you to come up with these sort of mythologies and folk tales about the people who have been there, who have come before you, you know, the legacy of it.
And you got to add that in, because eventually people might have started to be like, do we really need to be covering this painting?
Right.
And the answer is yes, because one time they tried not to.
Yeah.
And look what happened.
That's very true. Like, that builds the story even more. You're like, no, we have to do it, because once this tragedy befell us.
Yeah. Once someone tried to go against the curse.
Yep. It makes the curse even stronger then, right? You can't reject it. You can't refuse it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Now, the most famous haunted painting in Britain's history is unique, because it's not just one painting that carries the curse. It's thousands. But to tell this story, we will need to tell the story of Fleet Street. Now, Fleet Street in central London is the UK's home of journalism. For nearly 500 years, that section of the city has been home to printers and publishers. In 1702, London's first newspaper, the Daily Courant, was published there. 1702.
It took them that long to have a newspaper?
Yeah.
That's crazy, really?
That's the official newspaper.
There had to be other newspapers.
I think there were circulars and things, but that's the first time that there was
pamphlets.
a newspaper.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, though. That does seem like a long time, because the printing press was invented in 1560. Anyway, it's a while.
Also, that's the first one on Fleet Street, too. Not to say that there weren't others there, but that's the first one on Fleet Street that sort of establishes Fleet Street as the news hub.
That makes sense now. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. And about a century and a half after that, Henry Mayhew was on Fleet Street writing about Toshers and the Hampstead sewer hogs.
Cool.
For the Morning Chronicle.
Nice.
Okay.
Also Charles Dickens, who wrote for the Morning Chronicle there on Fleet Street.
Right.
Now, throughout the late 19th century, which was considered the golden age of British print journalism, more and more papers started springing up there. This was largely the result of 3 factors: the repeal of taxes on newspapers, improvements in the printing press, and the introduction of the British postal system. That last one probably the most prominent of them all, because suddenly you could distribute it through the post. You didn't need to, I guess you still had newsboys on the corner yelling about it or people going and seeking it out, but it became really easy to be like, hey, pay me, you get the paper every week or whatever, right? These factors contributed to create a fertile ground for this newspaper boom centered on Fleet Street, which was now being called the Street of Ink. But it was still very costly to start up and even maintain a newspaper. Because, you need journalists, you need your printing presses, and you also need the influence to be able to stay afloat and stay relevant. And that meant many newspapers were owned or at least subsidized by the wealthy nobility. They were called press barons, and they were essentially the media moguls of today. Two prime examples of these are the Harmsworth brothers, Lords Northcliffe and Rothermere, who collectively owned a gigantic chunk of the British press. They owned the Daily Mail, the Times, and the Daily Mirror around the end of the 19th century and early 20th century. EJ, do you remember Lord Rothermere?
He sounds very familiar.
Yeah, we talked about him because he was running the Daily Mail when the surgeon's photograph was taken at Loch Ness, and the Daily Mail printed the surgeon's photograph under him. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Now, during his time at the paper, Lord Rothermere also had frequent meetings with Adolf Hitler and used the Daily Mail to help spread his misguided beliefs that Nazis were the only thing keeping Britain from plunging into complete socialist chaos.
Oh my God. I read about him in preparation, and it said that 2 of his 3 sons were killed in the First World War. So he was very anti-war. It seems like on a superficial level of just like war took people that mattered to me. So then he didn't want war again in Europe, which was at first when I was reading about him, I was like, oh, okay, like that was actually a lot of the reason that people appeased Hitler at first, trying to make diplomacy work, because they all still remembered the First World War and it was absolutely terrible. And they were like, maybe we can avoid doing this again. And then it became very clear that they couldn't, etc. But then I started reading about how he was like, but actually fascism is great. And I was like, hold up, sir. You cannot be like, I'm for peace and I don't want war, but also yay fascism. Sounds like maybe you're more like yay fascism than I don't want war.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Anyway.
He staunchly supported Oswald Mosley and the fascists. Yeah. I have a quote from him. Do you want to do this in your British accent, EJ?
Oh, I'd love to offend all of our British listeners very much. Yes. I can't wait.
You don't have to.
I'm going to save my amazing impressions for the privacy of my own home. All right. As a purely British organization, the Black Shirts, fascists, will respect those principles of tolerance which are traditional in British politics. They have no prejudice either of class or race.
What? Also, you're a lord. You have prejudices of class, okay? Like, what are you talking about?
No, but it was his class. It was his class that they didn't have prejudices of.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
I got it.
That's how it works.
And this is the thing. And we'll talk about this shortly. But a lot of this ended up in this idea of keeping Britain British, or keeping the traditional British values that, and he saw the fascists, Mosley's Black Shirts, as the party that would do that. And he thought, I guess, of Hitler that way too, that Hitler was just trying to keep Germany's foundational values strong.
They love that one.
Yeah.
They love that line. Conservatives of all types.
Yep. That's the thing about these press barons. They used their newspapers to essentially disseminate their own ideas to the greater public. And so to Lord Rothermere, the Daily Mail was his Twitter, and his readership were his followers. It wasn't so much about journalistic integrity, it was about communicating a message. And that message said, Hitler good. Now, that, of course, all gets tied into this idea of yellow journalism or tabloid journalism, using sensationalism to promote your journalistic entity. Driven by a need to sell papers, editors in the late 19th and early 20th centuries published more and more exaggerated and sensationalized headlines, hoping that they would be eye-catching enough to get people to buy. That we, of course, differentiate from broadsheet journalism, which is your serious, in-depth journalism. That name actually comes from the size of the broadsheets, your traditional newspaper size, the big one that you unfold at the breakfast table, right? Tabloids are these small sort of magazine-sized newspapers. So I guess the idea was that you could tell the quality of a paper's journalism and integrity by how difficult it was to hold. Honestly, tabloid journalism is why the Daily Mail published the photograph of the Loch Ness Monster in the first place. Because this is the perfect story for them. It's an exclusive picture. It's an exclusive interview about a topic that is so outlandish that no other journalist, especially no self-respecting broadsheet journalist, is going to publish this without, being able to put facts and references and things behind it, right? So in many ways, the surgeon's photo is a hallmark of this movement. As we've seen time and time again, if you can just hook people with the lake monster, they might sit down and read your paper, and then they'll read your column on how Hitler's a great guy with a great mustache, and then suddenly you have a cryptid enthusiast who has been converted into a Nazi sympathizer.
And it ain't like that easy, but I'm sure that it happens over time, enough times. I also think there's something in there where like you look at the Loch Ness Monster thing and it's kind of fantastical. And so your mind is a little bit more open and willing to see things that might not be totally real. And so when you go to the Hitler section of it, you're like, I've been believing things for a while in this newspaper that I'm kind of like, they're fantastical to believe, but you know what? I'm going to believe this too. This seems realistic as well. Yes. Mm-hmm. Like the manipulation of the mind. The mind is more fertile ground to buy things.
You open it with the cryptid, right? Mm-hmm. And then once it's open, maybe even to the point where like the cryptid is so unrealistic that when you have these articles about fascism, the people are now like, well, that seems more realistic than the cryptid. That's easier to believe than what was on page 1, right?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with both of you. Like, I actually see it more as like, or I wonder sometimes if it's more of like, even if people don't actually think that the cryptids are real, but they are more inclined to speculate. They want to believe they're real, or they're like, have more of a conspiratorial brain. And so they like that this tabloid will print about the cryptids, even if they don't actually think those are real. Mm-hmm. That then when the tabloid is doing serious journalism and publishing real stories, they're like, oh, these are my people. So I'm going to trust that this news that they're giving me is real, or that these are opinions that I should take seriously or adopt. Yeah. Does that make sense? That's how I see it working, is manipulation, you know?
That makes perfect sense. And I mean, it sounds a little bit like something, some other news organization or something that I can't quite put my finger on, but Slaying Monsters is not a political podcast. So, yeah.
Well, it also sounds to me like social media.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Like you develop trust with an influencer or someone because you like that the way that they put on makeup, or they share other things in common with you, other interests in common with you. And then when that person says, oh, you should have this opinion that actually has more like real world impact, you're more likely to listen to them.
Yeah. Yep,
even if they don't know what they're talking about, or they don't care about facts, which is the case of the tabloid journalists.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And then the other part of this, of course, at the end of the day, is you just want to sell papers, right? And what's a great way to sell a newspaper? Here's a fucking living dinosaur on the cover, right? Mm-hmm. So this all leads us to our first figure in this bizarre story, Jan Ludwig Hock, or as he's better known, Robert Maxwell. Born in Czechoslovakia, Maxwell became a naturalized British citizen after World War II and changed his name. In 1964, he was elected to Parliament as a member of the Labour Party. He was called the Socialist Millionaire. That was the nickname that they gave him, Socialist Millionaire. And he proudly told the New York Times in 1984, quote,
"I'm a man that everybody loves to hate."
5 years after his election, Maxwell set out to purchase his own newspaper. Similar to these other press barons like Lord Rothermere, his intention was to put his money behind something that could also disseminate his propaganda, or at the very least, allow him to express his ideas to his constituents. Again, kind of think Twitter, right? Maxwell's first intention was to buy the weekly tabloid News of the World. That was a gigantic paper with a very extensive readership, sold over 8 million copies weekly, even in the 1960s. Now, that success and readership demographic made it a perfect target for Maxwell, and he thought it was the ideal way to gain attention of broad swaths of Britain and boost his stance in Parliament. But News of the World was a target for another press baron too, this one from Australia. That was Keith Rupert Murdoch. He'd come up as a publisher in Australia and New Zealand, and after his father's death, he inherited a stake in News Limited, which was an anti-union propaganda organization. Under this younger Murdoch, the company expanded and gained Sydney's The Daily Mirror and The Australian. Murdoch's whole strategy was find a struggling newspaper, one of these places that, like we've been talking about, it's hard to make money as a newspaper, it's hard to stay afloat. So he would find these struggling newspapers, inject them with capital, and then completely overhaul their staff as well. A lot of times he did a lot of cuts and then installed his own journalists, or at least journalists who were sympathetic to him. And those journalists, when I say sympathetic to him, I mean that they were libertarians, they supported big business, they supported small government, right? That combination made him a very successful press baron in Australia. And now Murdoch wanted to expand his empire into the UK. So he was really attracted to that 8 million readership number that the News of the World carried, and he wanted to get in on that. So now we have Robert Maxwell and Rupert Murdoch at odds. Maxwell tried to make this an entirely political thing, and he saw his rival as a foreigner. Again, trying to overthrow this staunchly British institution, News of the World. You don't want an Australian coming in here and telling you what British news is, right? In an interview with The Spectator, Robert Maxwell said,
I'm not doing this in a British accent, but goddamn, this should be in a British accent. This is a British paper, run by British people. As British as roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. Let's keep it that way.
Oh my God. That's a valiant effort, EJ.
Thanks. Oh, I mean,
to
listen.
do the British accent.
I know. Because I nail them. I'm very good.
I don't know
how
how you don't do it.
I know.
Yeah, it just I can hear like it's just Monty Python in my head, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's so hard. Like, I'm one of those people that adopts accents of people around me, and it's very hard when I'm in the UK to not start, rounding my vowels a little bit more. And I'm just like, stop it.
Same.
You don't live here.
Yeah, I know. It's like you go to Europe you're that American that goes to Europe for a week and then comes back with an accent and can't. I'm that way with British, but hardcore with Irish, because I think it's just slightly my upbringing. But then also just I hear, and whenever there's like an Irish television show or a movie, I am stuck in an Irish loop of Irish accent and have to get it.
I can do it to EJ. I won't do it to EJ, but I just need to speak like 3 words in an Irish accent to EJ, and it'll start, and then they won't be able to get out of it.
Yeah. But I come by it naturally. I have Irish cousins. I've been to Ireland. It's like a very like...
So Rupert Murdoch would not be deterred. And his bid for News of the World was successful. In 1969, he took over ownership of that newspaper. It was his first UK newspaper. But he wasn't satisfied with a weekly newspaper, because that means that there were still 6 days of the week that he wasn't making money. And so his next task was finding a daily paper which could deepen his presence on Fleet Street and make him even more money. His next acquisition was The Sun, a struggling broadsheet paper. This was a side project of the Daily Herald, a paper. It was kind of a unremarkable liberal publication. It never really managed to gain traction with its target audience. It was a little old, a little bit stuffy, but still, I think the important thing here is that it was, at its inception, a broadsheet. The Sun was not a tabloid when it first came out. They were delivering legitimate news through that newspaper until Murdoch took it over. When he did, he overhauled it, same way he had done with his Australian acquisitions. He gutted the staff and appointed a new editor, a man named Larry Lamb. Lamb had been a copy editor at the Daily Mirror, where he had been constantly frustrated by lack of upward progress in his career. He felt very stuck at the Daily Mirror. But now, Lamb was the chief editor of his own paper, and he took it upon himself to basically get revenge against his former employer, because he wanted to attack them, but also wanted to try to cannibalize some of their readership. So he wanted to attract new readers through sensationalism, and that aligned with Murdoch's drive to sell as many newspapers as he could, and they pivoted The Sun to be a tabloid newspaper. But now it's one that is a tabloid coming in with a history of being a broadsheet, being a legitimate newspaper, and that changes the way the readers deal with it and process the news that comes from it, right? Now, knowing that the Mirror played kind of coy, they were a little guarded with their coverage of sexual subjects, Lamb made that his number 1 weapon at The Sun. Very soon, page 3 of every issue of The Sun featured a topless female model, every single edition. And
Page 3?
Page 3. Yeah, they were page 3 girls.
Wow. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But they encourage people to buy, right?
Yeah.
And then this guy, he's sort of a horn dog. And they kind of reveled in covering affairs and sex scandals, often in very juicy details. Again, what a great way to sell papers, right? Beyond the sensationalism angles, Murdoch and Lamb focused the paper on conservative readers, which is now a deviation from the previous target, because it was a broadsheet targeted at liberals. That's another separation that Lamb has from the Mirror now, and it creates kind of this political dividing line between them. In Britain, it sort of became that Labour parties, liberals, would read the Mirror, and Tory conservatives read the Sun. And now you have this dividing line. Whatever party you're in, you read their newspaper.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we need balanced journalism.
It's true. It's true. For all their bloviating sex sensationalism, Murdoch and Lamb knew exactly what the fuck they were doing. And by 1975, the Daily Mirror was lagging behind in sales and had to respond and had to figure out how to get some of their readership back. And so 1975, they published their first nude model in response to The Sun's page 3 girls. That did very little to stymie the meteoric rise of The Sun, however, and by 1968, the Mirror had fallen behind in sales to the Tory tabloid.
What was their model? Was it not even a hot? Was it just like Joe down the road who they got to lay across a bed and take a picture? Like, did they pick a good model?
Did they pick someone good?
Yeah. Or did they,
I don't know.
This is the hot question we gotta know the answer to.
I have to admit that while I was doing the research for this, I did not spend a whole lot of time looking at the page 3 girls. I'm sorry.
Wow. Okay.
You didn't go back into the archives?
No, I did not.
This reminds me so much of Succession,
It
which
is,
I know
yeah.
is loosely based off Murdoch, but
Yeah.
the whole war
Yeah.
between the liberal and the conservative paper and everybody's bad, everybody's a fucking asshole, nobody's good.
Throughout all of this, at no point have I said, man, we were really focused on bringing like the most journalistic integrity to the people or anything. And look, that I believe that there were individual journalists and there were individual editors that were trying to do that. But it's really hard when top down, the message from these magnates is sell as many papers as possible. I don't give a shit. I only care about numbers.
It just reminds me of so many other things that we're dealing with today, where it's like, I only care about the profit and the number. I do not care about the quality, the product, if it's actually going to serve the purpose it was originally intended to serve.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to that end, when there was a dip in sales in 1981, Murdoch sent Lamb on a 6-month sabbatical and appointed a new editor named Kelvin Mackenzie. Mackenzie, I mean, now if Lamb was right-wing conservative, Mackenzie was even farther. He was an abrasive hooligan whose journalistic career had taken him from London to New York and then sent him back to London because in New York they couldn't stand him. Mackenzie had a habit of pissing off everybody. Rival editors, his own staff, and the people he worked for. He was very foul-mouthed, but that foul-mouthed attitude was exactly the kind of voice that Murdoch wanted at The Sun to move it even further to the right. So under Mackenzie, the paper proudly supported Prime Minister Thatcher's Falklands War and the torpedoing of an Argentinian naval cruiser. They took a decidedly xenophobic stance and claimed that they sponsored a missile during the conflict and actually featured a doctored photo of a Polaris missile with the newspaper's logo on it.
Talk about losing your journalistic integrity.
This is about 20 years, actually not even. It's a little over a decade since the paper was at least pursuing real broadsheet journalism, right? And these kind of shock tactics, I mean, they obviously drew a lot of ire from traditional papers like the Daily Mirror, but they sold a ton of copies. Asshole or not, Kelvin Mackenzie knew exactly how to push that readership forward. You got to be loud, you got to be brash, and sometimes you got to be completely inaccurate. He would throw integrity to the wind and filled his paper with eye-catching headlines like, these are all real. Elton John was paying underage boys for sexual favors. The comedian Freddie Starr ate a hamster in a sandwich. And Thatcher's rivals participated in, quote, gay Olympics in San Francisco.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Give me some gay Olympics. Hell yeah.
While all this was happening, Robert Maxwell finally got the chance to purchase his own newspaper. And in 1984, he bought Mirror Group, which granted him control not only of the Sun's rival, the Daily Mirror, but also several other smaller papers. Maxwell leapt into action and injected £1 million in capital into this endeavor and headlined himself on the front of the Daily Mirror. He kept that paper's liberal slant, but now it started featuring articles about Robert Maxwell and his charitable contributions and activities, and that helped to bolster him in the public eye. So you have the Mirror's journalists pounding Thatcher and the conservative government and the wildly unpopular Falklands War as their cornerstone. In response to this, Kelvin Mackenzie realized that he needed more must-read headlines to keep the public satiated and on his side and buying his newspapers. Sensationalism sells better than truth. That's always been his philosophy. And he also knew that the best way to buy that sensationalism was with an exclusive story, something that was so wild and so edgy that no respectable journalist or editor would touch it. In September of 1985, a fire devastated a house in South Yorkshire. In perhaps the most British thing possible, that fire started in a chip pan, which is a deep frying basket used for making fries or chips. From there, the blaze tore through the ground floor of the home. Ron and May Hall had owned the property for 27 years, and now they found it unlivable. But they also reported a bizarre detail. Although the fire had destroyed their entire downstairs, it hadn't touched one of their paintings, a framed picture of a toddler with a single tear running down his cheek. This whole thing got written up in the Sheffield Star on September 2nd in an article by John Murphy. The headline read, "Family Hit by Curse." The Star mentioned that Ron Hall's brother, Peter, was a fire marshal and had claimed that he'd been to several house fires with crying children paintings that had somehow survived.
He told the family that every house fire he's been called to, there's been the same sad print.
May Hall actually blamed the painting for the fire and said,
"It's not going back in the house. It's going to the bin. It's a lovely print, but it's got to go."
And her husband, Ron Hall, was even angrier at the painting and said,
"I want to burn it to make sure it doesn't come back. If I find out who painted it, then I'll sue him."
So
I just think the wife's quote is like the most British shit I've ever heard.
I know. It's
going
to the
in the
bin.
bin.
It's a lovely print, but it has to go.
To the bin with you.
now at this point, the curse lore hadn't really been established. It's just that Peter Hall claimed he'd seen other crying children in other burned homes, and his brother and sister-in-law believed him, right? That's the original reporting around these paintings. But Kelvin Mackenzie opened the Sheffield Star to page 7 and stared into the eyes of this cursed painting, and his imagination sparked. After a quick bout of research, it revealed that the painting of the crying boy was one of a series produced by an artist who went by the name G. Braglin. For reasons that escape me personally, the Crying Children were a very popular painting series in the UK, with an estimate of 50,000 copies sold. 50,000 homes. Yeah.
No, but this is like, remember in the 90s when those babies with flowers were like popular paintings that people like had in their homes?
Yeah.
Like they were considered, they were like portraits, they were actual photographs.
There were photos
Yeah,
or paintings?
Anne Geddes, Geddes.
Oh. Oh, God. What?
Yeah.
They were like so popular in the 90s. Like people had them, you could like buy prints of them.
Oh.
And they're so fucking weird.
So,
This
like,
is what I'm saying.
ew, what is this? What's this one? What the fuck is this one?
Yes.
Holy fuck. There's this child
There's-
being birthed out of a peony. It is the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life.
I don't understand
fuck?
why people want to have pictures and paintings of other children on their walls. Like,
Yes.
I understand you have you have your own kid. Put your own kid on your wall. It's fine. Like, you commission a painting of your child. Cool. Whatever. But like, why would you put someone else's kid that you don't know on your wall?
They're so weird. But anyway,
This missed me. I didn't. My family did not. Nobody I knew had this shit on their walls.
That's probably
Holy
for the
No.
best.
No, we didn't either. But like, I knew it was a thing. Doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I don't know. I know that they were initially one of the first pieces of art to be widely available in Britain, but I still don't know why people were like, whoa, I really want to have this art and put it on my wall, you know?
Katie, I just want to say, if my Instagram algorithm starts sending me Ann Getty's fucking shit because of you, I'm never going to forgive you.
I'm sorry.
I mean, look, I chose to look
listen,
this
that's
up.
fair.
It's fair. It's my choice. I looked it up. It's my fault. Okay, I take some blame. But there are some things I can't unsee. I might like horror and everything, Katie, but this is a level of horror that I'm not okay with.
I
A
know.
baby being pushed out of a peony is the most disturbing thing I've ever seen.
It's so bad. It's so bad. And this woman is so famous.
How is
she
this
made a
cute?
lot of money. I don't know. It's the equivalent to me of like a Disney adult. Like,
Yes. Oh my God, can we please talk about this? Can we please have a moment and talk about this? Disney adults. What is that?
it's weird. Like, I have as much of a fondness and nostalgia for Disney as the next person. But like, and I have gone there as an adult and it was really fun. But like, going there all the time, like making it your whole personality, like I don't get it. And it's the same with like, I don't get how you can look at those photos and be like, cute, I'm gonna hang it on my wall.
Yes. I would hang it all over my house if I wanted to scare somebody away. I would like if somebody was coming over that I didn't like and never wanted in my life again, I'd hang them all over my wall and like just scare the fuck out of them.
The side effect of having all the paintings that you would put up to scare people away is that you'd also scare people if you like stored them in the basement when
Yeah, right.
when you didn't have them up and someone goes down to your basement and you just have like 50 of these child paintings like in your basement.
Just be like, oh, can you go get something for me in the basement? Can you just get the popsicles out of the freezer for
Oh
me?
my God. Just walk down there and there's like a corridor of fucking crying children in the
No,
basement.
not crying children. And Getty's
Oh,
babies.
and Getty's, yeah.
Okay.
Oh man.
Anyway, okay, 50,000 crying children
Yes.
prints.
Yeah. This was Kelvin Mackenzie's exclusive. And so on September 4th, the front page of The Sun featured the headline, Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy. The paper called the painting a fire jinx, and the article was largely a republication of the Sheffield Star's previous reporting, just kind of punched up. But The Sun claimed that firemen all over the country were calling the picture cursed and blaming it for causing the fires, not just surviving the fires, but actually causing fires in people's homes. In addition, the article planted a particular notion. It wasn't just the Hall's painting that was cursed. It was this entire line of crying children paintings, all 50,000 of them. They were all cursed. And you might even have one in your home right now. And to that end, The Sun encouraged readers to write in or call in with their own stories and misfortunes surrounding their paintings. And it's with the deluge of reports and The Sun's continued lore building of the Curse of the Crying Boy that we will conclude this story next time.
I also love that they just like made it. Like 50,000 people had these photos. Let's be generous. Let's say a fifth of them, like something bad has happened to them since they have the photo. But now you've put in their brains that it's because of the photo, even though they weren't thinking that before. They're like, oh, hey, you know, I did get cancer after I bought this photo. Or like, my refrigerator door won't stop popping open.
Right.
Any number. Right. But like, they never thought of it. It was, I mean, it really is a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
It
yeah.
is.
You're right, because that changes the framing of how you look at it, right? And then all of a sudden you're saying, well, you're cherry picking. You're looking for what is the cursed thing that happened to me after this thing. And I mean, everybody has ups and downs, right? Everybody has some kind of misfortune that happens. And now you can blame it on this one particular thing that you bought or that was given to you or something like that. That's the cause of the misfortune, right? And this story is going to get even bigger and even wilder before we're done, because Kelvin MacKenzie lives life big and wild. Thank you all so much for listening. If you're feeling generous, head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com, click on the Support Us button at the top of the page, and consider leaving a donation or becoming one of our supporters there. And that's also where you can find our merch store if you want to wear your support. EJ, do you want to talk about something?
So pre-orders are now available for my new horror novel, Anna Must Die Again, through Evil Twin, which is a new horror imprint through Zando. The pub date will be May 4th, 2027. I believe you can pre-order wherever books are sold. So I think you can go to any support your indie bookstores, order them from your local indie bookstores.
If our listeners don't know and you want to support your local indie bookstore or another indie bookstore that is not in your area, you can go to bookshop.org, which has,
yes,
or just indie bookstores in general. Just letting people know that exists. If you need to order online, you can't get to a bookstore.
Thank you, Katie. Yes. Pre-orders are very, very important when it comes to a book that's coming out. It tells the publisher about the interest of the book and everything like that. So please, if you can make it work financially. I know times are really hard, and I'm totally get it. But feel free to pre-order my book. I deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, and for our listeners, because I know that our listeners all like the weird stuff. That's why they listen to the podcast. So you want to give them a little hint as to what it is, what the book is about, even just a tease.
Yes, it is a queer Thelma and Louise meets modern day Stepford Wives.
And we're so excited for it.
Oh,
Thank you.
So excited. We'll be talking more about that in the future at some point.
EJ's going to make me read a horror novel, everyone.
Yay! Read along with Katie.
Yes.
Well, yeah, thank you all so much for listening. And, check out your local newsstand. Until then, be safe out there.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the 40 in History podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways you can show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on socials at Slaying Monsters Podcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.